an iPod, a phone, and an internet communicator. An iPod, a phone. Are you getting it? These are not three separate devices. This is one device. And we are calling it iPhone.
In 1976, no one could have imagined that two young men in California would build a company that would eventually become one of the most recognizable brands in the world. It began with two young men. Steve Jobs was 21 years old, and Steve Wozniak was 26. In 1975, a group of computer enthusiasts began meeting at a club called the Homebrew Computer Club. Wozniak attended these meetings as well. At the time, computers were mostly large and expensive machines used by companies, universities, and research institutions, but Wozniak had a different idea. He began designing a personal computer. The result was what would later become known as the Apple I. They did not have much money. To get started, Jobs sold his Volkswagen van, while Wozniak sold his HP 65 programmable calculator. Together with some additional resources and credit, they had roughly $1,200 to start the business. But a few months later, in 1975, a computer store called the Byte Shop opened in Mountain View, California. Its owner, Paul Terrell, became interested in Wozniak's new computer. Instead of simply asking for a demonstration unit, he placed an order for a larger number of computers. That order gave Jobs and Wozniak an important opportunity to turn their idea into a real business. On April 1, 1976, Apple Computer Company was officially formed. At this stage, another person was also involved in the creation of the company, Ronald Wayne. But Wayne soon became concerned about the future of the business. Only about 12 days later, he left the company and gave up his stake. That decision would later become one of the most famous missed opportunities in business history. 1 year later, in 1977, Apple introduced a product that would dramatically increase the company's success, the Apple II. Unlike the Apple I, the Apple II was a much more complete computer designed for a broader consumer market. By 1980, revenue from the Apple II had reached approximately $49 million. During the 1980s, Apple entered a new stage. Steve Jobs wanted to create a computer that would make technology much easier for ordinary people to use. The result was the Macintosh. But as Apple grew, internal disagreements also increased. Jobs and the company's executives disagreed about the future direction of Apple. Those disagreements eventually led to one of the most important events in the company's history. Steve Jobs left Apple in 1985.
I don't really think that way. Well, I'm a private person, and when I think of the most valuable things in my life, I think of my family.
After leaving Apple, Jobs founded a new company called Next. By the middle of the 1990s, Apple was no longer the powerful company it had been during its earlier years. Then something happened that few people expected. In 1996, Apple acquired Next. With that acquisition, Steve Jobs returned to Apple. In 1998, Apple introduced the iMac. In 2001, Apple entered the music industry and introduced the iPod. Several years later, in 2007, Apple introduced a product that would transform both the company and the mobile phone industry, the iPhone. The iPhone combined a mobile phone, a music player, and internet access into one device. After that, Apple introduced products such as the iPad and Apple Watch, gradually transforming itself from a computer company into a massive technology ecosystem. However, in 2011, a tragic event occurred for Apple. Steve Jobs passed away. But the company that he and Steve Wozniak had started in 1976 with very limited resources continued to grow. Today, 50 years after Apple's founding, the story of the company is not simply a story about computers, smartphones, or technology. It is the story of an idea that began with two young men, roughly $1,200, and a simple computer, an idea that faced failure, conflict, and crisis many times. And perhaps that is the most important part of Apple's story. The world's greatest companies do not always begin with the biggest buildings or the largest amounts of capital. Sometimes, a great company begins with a small idea and a few people who are willing to take a risk for it. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like it and subscribe for more videos.